to make his presentation. Antonio will talk about toward ASN and electronic chart implementation, challenges and best practice. Antonio, please.
Thank you. First of all, I want to thank IFIMA for being such a good host. I don't know how many of you are liking until now at the conference, but it's really good. I'm going to talk about towards AXM and electronic chart implementation, challenges and best practices. And I'm going to talk about from a country that's not in Europe or the US, so it's a little bit less overwhelming, because when you see ETOD 2, 3, 4, and ADQ and all these things that are even further down the line than ICAO is, then you get a little bit, scared. What am I supposed to do that I don't have even a database? So a little bit about COSESNA. COSESNA is a Central America Corporation of Air Navigation Services. This is an international organization for regional integration in Central America. We are the NSAP for upper airspace over Belize, Costa Rica, Guatemala, El Salvador, Honduras, and Nicaragua. We manage about 2.9 million square kilometers. We have seen the sky since February 1960, so yeah, we got that first. Okay. We have about 15,000 movements per month, and 21% are overflights. 79% are domestic and international. So we got a lot of flights coming into the region. And we have regional growth, like in every one of our regions. We have 4.7% in Latin America overall. We're in the middle, CENAMER. It's 4.9%. And North America is expected to grow 3.3% and South America 4.7%. So why don't I talk about all of this? Because sometimes we forget that one of the enablers that all of these aircraft are able to fly is the AIM and all of the structure behind it. So if we want to sustain a 4.9% growth in Central America, we need to have the tools. And of course we need radar control, of course we need ADS-B, of course we need all of this, but we also need AIM data and implementation of it. So what do we have right now? And it might be a little bit different in each country, but Central America is special because each country has their own AIM office, but then we have one NOTAM international office located in COSESNA. So we are the North. And we do publishing. We have a Central America AIP, but each country has their own individual AIP. So it's a little bit different than ASEGNA or PIARCO does, right? And we do cartography. We have a GIS. I'm the GIS specialist, by the way. And we have procedure design. And I don't know if in other states it's the same, but we have noticed that procedure design over time has shifted from air traffic control and moved towards AIM areas. So you're going to see that most of procedure design are done in the AIM areas. Mainly because AIM has administrative staff working 8 to 5 or something like that, and ATC does shifts. So it's a little bit difficult to do a procedure design after a 12-hour or 10-hour shift. You're hired just once at home. So by agreement of the member states, on November 5th, 1998, we were delegated the AIS and the NOF of Central America. So it's a little bit of background. So what do we have right now? Each of the member states, we have 6, remember, have their own production system. And this is a little bit difficult because each of them has a little bit different thing. So you can have CAD in one country, and you can have GIS in another country, and then you can have paper-based and Illustrator in another country. Perfectly normal. And we're still traditional, paper-based, so what we do is we use a word processor, and we just copy stuff and edit it. Like I mentioned, we have different tools for cartography. And one of the issues of using a CAD tool is that sometimes you don't georeference your data. And when you don't georeference your data, you're getting into trouble because you're not able to check a lot of things, like the correct placement of things, the distance, the bearings. Because if you just draw it by hand and just taking a leap of faith, you're doing it right. So this is how a little bit how it looks right now, cartography of some of the member states, and I can say it looks nice. Okay. And you can see there's a little bit of 3D terrain there, background, and we have 3D analysis. And for that, we're not using any special tool. We're not using any special aeronautical tool. We're just using normal GIS stuff, 3D stuff on it. So it's kind of one-off thing, you know. And I know it's pretty much very simple if you got few airports to do. If you got 14, 20 airports, I would definitely want an automated tool. But if I got 1, 2, 3 airports, I might get away with just doing it manually. And you know, you'll have the normal cartography you have to do for the AIP, right? But then you get requests from ATC and ATFM and everybody that gets to know you make maps. Hey, I want a map for this. And you end up doing map for presentations, for air traffic flow, for ATC, and that's okay because that's the purpose of it, you know, to just spread the authority database throughout the organization. And also, we use procedures and we validate them and we overlay them over the cartography we do. Because since it's georeference on the GIS, we can overlay tracks, like in this slide. This is the El Salvador implementation of PVM. So we just took the track from the radar control, we process it, and we put it overlay on the map, and we can check if the procedure is right or not. So it's an additional step from flight validation. And talking about the current flight plan system, it was developed in the house. So we use a flight plan and Milton system that was developed in Cosesma by our IT department. That's what we have right now. But they're disconnected databases, and they don't speak to each other. Each one has their own database. There's no standard format or exchange between each other. And there's what IXM is supposed to come and solve, right? So now to talk about the evolution of AXM in our region, Central America, we procure a new system, 5.1 base, because everybody wants to have the latest version, right? Nobody wants to have 4.5 system, 2015. And we're planning to transition to new technologies in 2016. And as you can see, it's a lot of investment in technologies, but we also have to invest in the training of the staff, because without the training of the staff, then it's a little bit no use of the system. And the workflows, because the workflows are going to be different. It's not the same working on a paper-based AIP. It's not the same working Word or editing, you know, spreadsheets. It's a different thing. So what does the system contain? Well, you know, if it doesn't have a centralized database, then you're not doing it right. So it contains a flight plan and the AIP module and static database input and procedure design software and charting and all the TAM services. So it's a pretty complete system. It covers all of what you want to have for implementation. So the AIP solution is based on XML, right? So you have this screenshot, and you're doing the error control specification of the AIP because there's no ICAO implementation. So there's no guidance of ICAO that says you have to do an AIP. And that's a problem, it's a real issue. Because then a country can say, I can do my own AIP structure. It's not in anywhere in the document specified. Have a centralized database. Oh wait, that cannot be happening. Anyway. So we're gonna have to start again. And as you can see, everything that can go wrong will go wrong. You have to prepare for risk. That's another thing you have to prepare for. Anyway, talking about centralized database input. And now what changes is, before what we did is we had word processing. So they put their coordinates and VOR stuff in Word. And then we had flight plan and NOTAM system that we had to feed again, so we can have transcription errors. And then we have a disconnected cartography GIS database. So the database was pretty much complete correct, but it was disconnected from everything else. So with the new system, we're going to have a centralized database. We bought a charting solution because honestly, when it comes to producing a lot of charts, you want consistency, you want templates, you want things that you can automate, that you can go from step 1 to step 2 pretty much fast. And the thing with automation is that you can do quality control of it. You know, it's easy to reproduce. It's easy to continuously do it the same way, by different staff. Because one of the things that we notice is depending on the skill of the staff, you can notice who designed the chart because of the different skill sets. That's one of the things of using an automated solution. And of course, we need to have still the town, which I personally think that it's a very outdated way of transmitting information, but we still have the NOTAM system, and we need to provide a flight plan and managed services. And with the new system, we're going to have an additional layer of quality assurance, and as you can see here, we're going to have a graphical input, so we're going to check if this route is correctly flying throughout FIRs. And of course, we need to have a different thing than AFTN, which is really very old solution. We have an MHS thing. Staff training. And this is one of the areas that gets pretty much overlooked when we buy a system. When we do the needs assessment of what we want to buy, usually the first things that get cut are training and support and the warranty. Because we don't have all the money we want to buy the things we want. And sometimes we desire to have a very complex system. It has all these different modules working with each other, but we don't want to spend 5% or 10% of the total cost in training. So sometimes what we have is a state-of-the-art system that nobody uses because they can't handle the design and the procedures and the workflows. So what we're doing different in Central America now is that we're taking the centralized database approach like EAB has done, and initially it was like in Africa and the mid-region, to have the highest quality in real time for those making the decisions. Because at the end, the data has to be there for the persons making the decisions. So that may be a flight plan system, that may be, airline dispatcher, whatever. So the centralized database concept is that, having one authoritative data source for all the information, and also processing that information so that data users can make the right information at the right time. What are the challenges? Well, we have non-standard information uniformity. Sometimes we have different information, we have different resolutions for the waypoint, we have different resolution for the distances, we have different ways of calculating distances, etc. We also have several disconnected databases. Right now we have different databases, even the air traffic control database, like radar, you have to manually input each one of the waypoints, just go from one state to the other. And have different production systems. So it's like you go to the market and you get one of those universal cables, right? You have different plugs and pins. That's what we have right now. What are the challenges? Well, lack of software for charting, because one of the most costly elements is charting, believe it or not. It's pretty expensive because normally all vendors of software provide their solution based on top of another solution, so you have to buy a base solution always. So that makes it pretty expensive. And the lack of resources. Like I mentioned, we don't have money, all depends for what. But there's not enough money invested in the AAM. And the lack of staff. And not only the staff, because as it was mentioned previously, you can have the staff, you can have 20 officers, but do you have the skilled staff for the new requirements? And One of the things that you can see with this evolution is the sum of the job posts that you already have right now. They might not exist in 3, 5, 10 years. It was like the comm officers in many offices, we just transcribing and sending it away. And at least in Central America, we don't have any more comm office. It's done by the AIS. So pretty much you have to evaluate the role that your staff is doing right now. Because if your staff is just sending no temps or temps, I'm going to break it for you. It's not going to happen for very long. You have to try to evolutionize to a new way of working. So what are the best practices? In every implementation that has been successful, we have identified these things. First is the staff training. It's very important. Don't overlook your staff training. It's one of the most important parts of having a new AM system. So it's kind of difficult because if you see in Latin America, there's no AXM experts or institutions. But then again, we're a globalized world now. So you can look for solutions not in your region if you're not present. You can look for solutions in another region where there might be more advanced than where we are. And also a cost sharing scheme. If we bought an individual system for each of the 6 member states, we couldn't buy it. It's too expensive. But we're doing a cost sharing scheme because that's the most efficient way of doing it. Because that's the most efficient way of going forward. And you have to have standard procedures through the same system. One of the things that's going to enable this is to have the same procedures throughout Central America. So the staff are going to have the same procedures from Belize to Costa Rica. And it's actually going to make it very easy to do on-the-job training because now you can just bring someone from El Salvador to Honduras to do the on-the-job training because it's the same system. You have the same tools for cartography, the same tools for AIP, for everything. It's a little bit about like EAD does in Europe, You got this system and they bring the people to the institution and they get an intro to group AID thing, how to use SDO and etc. So it's kind of the same principle. Best practices. So the best practice is to have a centralized database for a single authoritative data source. And in practice, you may think you need to have one database, but in reality, you have several databases. The important thing is that they replicate between each other with the same information. So that's the key element. Sometimes we get a little bit confused about having just one server in a box, right? But you can have different servers replicating the same information. That's the important part. And to have an enterprise solution used by all your organization, not just one unit. Because if you think having a solution that is going to be used just by your AAM, it's going to be pretty expensive. Nobody's going to buy you something to just you use it. But if it goes enterprise, if it's used by ATC, if it's used by air traffic flow management, if it's used by the airlines, this becomes more like a cost-sharing economy. You distribute the cost between everyone who's going to use it. And talking about best practices, we're using the centralized database we have right now for some pretty interesting internal developments I'm going to talk about. And one is the WSSAC. This is electronic charts. This is used by our air traffic controllers in the radar. So before we used to get like paper-based charts, and we used to paste them on top, and who sent the paper-based charts is gonna know from where we got them. And they were put there, and yeah, they're nice. They have all the information, but you can't search on it. So if you don't know where a waypoint is, you're gonna spend a lot of time looking for it. And if you're an air traffic controller, you don't have time to waste that. So we designed this electronic chart from the database, and now they can see it and they can tap on it and just search whatever they want, and they can check procedures and distances. It's all touch-based right there next to the radar screen, and it serves another purpose. It's a fallback procedure in case the radar goes down. Because in this age, I don't think any air traffic controller is going to know why in their head every route, every waypoint, because you got much more waypoints than you used to have before. And another system that we have is the search and rescue tracking system, which uses also the same central database. So this search and rescue is very important because it's about saving lives. So this is a register with an ELT goes on. They register it with their mobile devices, and they can just coordinate whatever they want. So this is one of the things of the evolution. We couldn't do this if we still focused on paper. And another thing that we did was an internal development tool. So sometimes you have to check for the note selection criteria, right? And ICAO, unfortunately, doesn't provide a machine-readable format for everything, which you should, because most of the software now requires you to have a note selection criteria, and if you transcribe it, you introduce errors. ICAO can easily provide a machine-readable format for that. And also for abbreviations, sometimes you have to check for abbreviations and to calculate radius or something like that. So we need an internal tool for that. Now to finalize, moving towards a standardization in Central America for AIP charting database, input based on VDGIS software, internal tools, moving an open source technology stack. So I'm going to invite you to build a community around AXM and strive for the right information at the right time. Thank you.